Hello, Cancer. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Happy New Year to you, and I hope all of you had a beautiful holiday season. All right, Cancer, this one was interesting. So, from Alice, painting the roses red, covering up errors, and then from Whispers of Healing, you pulled hidden blessings. Now, when you look at painting the roses red, this is talking about covering up errors. Feeling like you may be a part of a situation or a relationship where someone is too harsh on you when you make mistakes. Feeling like you need to cover things up because the punishment would be worse than the actual mistake. But what was interesting to me was hidden blessings being attached to that. You know, there's a hidden blessing in everything, right? But if we're talking about errors being covered up, the hidden blessing may be that, it wasn't something that you needed to cover up. That, or we're finding out the truth about what has been kept hidden, covered up. And maybe the hidden blessing here is that the truth will set you free in this situation, whether that's good or bad. It could be one of those things where you find out about some errors or some mistakes and somebody may have been trying to cover it up, and maybe the hidden blessing here is that at least now you know. But maybe it's happening so something better can happen for you, or something better can come along. I find it interesting that there is a hidden blessing in the covering up of mistakes. All right, Cancer, here's your overall, the Page of Pentacles. I've been seeing this one a lot. With this being your overall, this could be that, you need to get more information, learn something new in order to start something here. It could be communication that's going to help you start a new project. It could be a new job, but it's building something, right? But with the Page of Pentacles, you're talking about needing to be dependable and realizing that there's going to have to be a lot of hard work put in, right? I always look at this as starting from the bottom and working your way up. But it could be that, you get the right information that helps you learn something new or start something new. In the past, the Eight of Swords. Okay, so in the past, this may have been a situation where you just didn't see how things could start over. There may have been, some things that you were thinking about that are preventing you from seeing how it was possible. But clearly here being stuck, not so much stuck with the past, but keeping yourself in this place where you don't see how something can be rebuilt. In the present, the Queen of Swords, boy. And that's the thing, right? Now, this could be the other person that you're dealing with, but the thing is with the Queen of Swords being there, especially with, painting the roses red, oh man, we could definitely be talking about you being a little bit harsh about the mistakes that somebody else has made. And that may be why they're trying to cover that up. Because I look at her as like being really harsh, But this could be because of a person here who may have done some things that have kept you in this place of thinking, well, there's really no way to kind of rebuild off of, what may have happened. And I don't want to say that you're being too judgmental, but that could be the other person though too, with the Queen of Swords, but we'll see here. And again, male, female, air sign. But this really looks like, needing to look at things in a different way in order to kind of start again. The Star, future conditions, very nice, very nice. So I think that more than anything, somebody needs to ease your mind. They need to clear some things up, these thoughts that keep you stuck. It's not the Nine of Swords where you're letting something torture you. It's just that whatever has happened has put you in this place where, like I said, you can't see how it's possible. And you may have been hurt here with the Queen of Swords, and you may be very harsh with somebody, or they're that way with you. But in order for things to, start again here, with the Star, there needs to be that healing. But hopefully, there's the healing of the situation here and hope being restored that, we can start over. And for some of you, it's just you've been stuck in a really tough position here. It may have made you a little bit bitter, right? But clearly here, you're trying to get back to a place of seeing the bigger picture, so to speak, and realizing that it's going to take a lot of hard work to kind of start over, And it could be that you just need to learn something new. But this could also show that you're learning something new about someone you're dealing with, though, too. But I like that the stars in future conditions, because it would suggest that there's hope in rebuilding. Your best path to follow, and that's kind of what I'm talking about with the Eight of Pentacles here. You're going to have to put in a lot of work, a lot of hard effort, and if it has to do with a relationship, nobody wants to see that. A relationship should be easy, no matter what the relationship is. But clearly this is something that you're going to have to really, really work at. I mean, with the Page of Pentacles being there, yeah. But the hidden blessing there, I kind of get the feeling that once you get past the errors, that things can be better than what they were. Maybe things had to happen that way for things to be, really, really good, right? Especially with the star being there. But attention to detail and a lot of hard work with the Eight of Pentacles. But I think that there's going to be benefit to this. Yeah, the Two of Swords. So, and that kind of brings me back to this feeling of, you kind of like being the Queen of Swords in this situation. So with the Two of Swords being in your environment, this wasn't, an easy thing for you to come to. It wasn't an easy decision to make. But I think that the star being in future conditions indicates that, it's going to get better. You're going to be more hopeful about rebuilding things. Because to me, that's really what the Page of Pentacles is, besides communication here. But realizing that, yeah, we're going to have to start all over again, and it's going to take a lot of hard work here. And I don't think that that was something that, you may have considered here with the Two of Swords. But I think that, your own thoughts were blocking you from seeing a clear choice. But, you still look good coming out on this. Now, though, it could be that if you're not willing to put in the effort, and maybe one of those things where you didn't want to have to make a difficult choice to say no. But the thing is right, the hidden blessing may be that there's something better, which can also be a possibility here. Because I'm looking at you coming in this way. Everything is centered around this new start with this Page of Pentacles, communicating back and forth about what are we actually trying to build here? Are we being realistic about how hard this is going to be? But I think it's more so for you than the other person. Your hopes and your fears, the Emperor. And I look at that and I think you don't want to allow somebody else to have control. Right now, the hope would be that, somebody steps up here and takes control of the situation and gets things in order, so that there isn't this chaos going on where you don't see how things are going to happen. But I always question who is really in control. Now you may be looking at this person as being a little bit too harsh about mistakes that you have made. And that may be where the issue is here. So there's definitely going to be a hidden blessing either way here, depending on what decision you make with the Two of Swords, because you're not going to stay in that position forever. I think that with the Queen of Swords, you're trying to find out as much information as possible so that you can make a clear choice. But I think that somebody has been a little bit too demanding and a little bit too harsh and a little bit too strict with the Emperor, right? And it may be that you're fearing that they're never going to be able to let go of those mistakes, or it's you. You're not going to be able to let go of what went wrong, something that somebody has tried to cover up, but you still have the blessing that's coming out of this. Oh my goodness. But I would say if you're fearing the Emperor here, it would be better if you kind of like took things into your own hands, But are you willing to, want to work on the situation and heal the issues? And then coming out the Three of Wands. Now, that can definitely show that you've set some things into motion, right? But you may be waiting to see how things are going to develop. But with the Emperor being hopes and fears and you showing the Two of Swords, what I worry about here is this is either going to be about you or the other person that you're dealing with. They may not be able to, make the choice to take control to get things going. And you may be waiting for something or expecting something from them. But the thing is we're still talking about the star being attached to this. So I would like to think that, the situation becomes a little bit more hopeful. But that really depends on how things develop, though. But somebody has to set it into motion here with the Three of Wands. So let's start with Justice here in the Eight of Swords. It would make sense that, you're not in a place where you can make a choice unless, things are corrected. This could show that somebody is needing to make amends. Somebody may be trying to, make things right. But I also think that because you're coming in as the Eight of Swords, that there needs to be a sense of justice with the situation, especially if somebody was trying to cover up a mistake. But, I would say that maybe we're being a little bit too harsh with the Queen of Swords, and refusing to kind of like make a choice that would help this person try to rebuild things with you, right? And it's clearly this isn't an easy situation. With the Queen of Swords, man, yeah, I would say that you're probably a little bit angry about what this person may have done. And with the King of Wands, this could be the person that you're dealing with here, male, female, fire. But we're talking about, somebody who had the ability to make something happen, but what they chose to do, I think, was something that clearly they needed to kind of like make up for, right? So I really think that this is going to be about somebody who's trying to make things right. And then you have this really kind of like harsh and strict response to this person and their actions. But the Five of Pentacles bothers me a little bit in terms of, this person may have like rejected you or kept you in the dark in terms of, what was going on in their life, the choices that they made. Clearly, they feel like they need to make up for it. The other thing, though, too, is that, in order for you to have bigger and better, it may be that this is one of those situations where if they don't follow through and you don't see things develop in, a good way, it may be that, it's time to kind of like move on from this, rejecting it. But I think that it's not acceptable anymore. I feel like this just isn't acceptable to have this person keeping you, out in the cold when it comes to what's going on with them. And clearly they took some action here that didn't go over well with you. I think that there is some hope in trying to rebuild things, but I think that that lies more in their hands. I think that you get the process going, but the rest of the way is like up to them. But I would say to you, be careful about, judging everything that this person does if they're being genuine, okay? Maybe they have learned with the King of Wands showing up. Maybe they've gained some wisdom when it comes to, what they have done, right? But that can also show that you have an attraction to this person, and it may be that you're realizing that maybe they're not the right choice for you. Maybe it's not the right choice to try to work things out. That, or you're dealing with somebody here who can't make the choice between you and someone else. But I look at the star and think there's a hidden blessing in here, definitely, where you deserve better and you can actually have better. But that only depends on what you feel like is developing out of the situation with the Three of Wands. And I do think that it's you expecting something from them, And it may be that they don't want to be left out of your life anymore with the Five of Pentacles. Maybe, they're trying to fix the situation because they want to be with you, or they want to work with you. They want to be a part of your experience. But this is like going to be really, really like tough almost, because that Eight of Pentacles and the Page of Pentacles, they're really going to have to show that they can put in the effort. You're going to have to see them really, trying to put in the effort here to make things right. They can't half-ass it. That's what I want to say. So celebrating the beginning of something new and your inner voice is going to be important here when, it comes to whether or not this is something that you want to work on. Because either way, there's going to be a beginning that you're going to be able to celebrate in your life, which is great. But you're going to have to pay attention to what the inner voice is telling you. But regardless, here we're looking at the beginning of something that I think is going to be better for you in the long run. But how long are you willing to wait, though, on someone else? And then desert passage, trust there's a divine plan. So when that one shows up, it can show that things are going to be barren for a while. But you have to trust that, there's a reason why you're moving through this space. Savor the good moments, right? Enjoy the things that bring you bliss. Those moments where you get to celebrate. It's important to remember that when you're moving through this area in your life where it feels like nothing is happening. But again, trusting that there's a divine plan, there's a reason why this is happening. But it's never long lasting, right? But I think that you're leading into a place where you get to enjoy life again. It's just that this situation may not, develop the way that you want it to. It may not, show anything. Nothing may develop out of this, but there are two people in play here. There's someone who did something very wrong that needs to, correct the situation. But then there's also the other one who is being a little bit too harsh. We can't be too demanding of another person, right? You can definitely demand that somebody be loyal and faithful and things like that. Don't ever settle for less. But, we can't demand things from people who are not willing to give it though either. I think that you need to pay attention to the amount of effort that is put in. That, I think, in the end will show you that they may be worth letting back into, your inner world